Do you ever wonder why people camp out overnight for Nike sneakers? And just a little story about my childhood. When I was young, I was one of 12 kids, and I never really got new shoes, at least not new Michael Air Jordans. And I always wanted to have a pair of Jordans. And I had this friend named Joey Martin, and he lived with his grandmother. I don't know the whole story, but his parents, I think, were deceased. And his grandma always bought him Michael Jordans, and always wanted a pair of Air Jordans, right? And so finally, Joey agreed to give me his. His were a little bit smaller than me, which might be why I have messed up feet today. Playing so much soccer and stuffing my feet inside smaller shoes. But anyway, they were about a size small, but they were the Carolina Blue Nikes, the Air Flights. I had a pair of the black Air Jordans. I think it was like version 3, maybe. Anyway, the point is that I always wanted a pair of Jordans and I could never afford them. And so anyhow, back to my opening question. Do you ever wonder why people camp out overnight for Nike sneakers? And why do Apple fans proudly stick that glowing logo on their car or their laptop or wherever they have it? Why does Coca-Cola feel like it belongs at every single family gathering? And why does Michael Jordan his Jumpman logo? It's not just a brand mark anymore. It's practically like a tattoo. So you have to ask yourself and understand it's really not about the product anymore. It's about the story. And these brands have figured out how to go from a little tiny story, a humble beginning, to a really big story that people can't stop talking about. And every single one of those giants started really small. So, in today's sort of thought leadership monologue, I'm going to break down how they did it and what you can copy or steal for your own brand. So, I've titled this From Little Story to Big Story, what small brands like us, me, can learn from these icons. And I've studied these cultural giants, and that's what they are. And so I want to start with Coca-Cola. I don't drink soda anymore. I used to, and uh, Coca-Cola was one of my favorite drinks before they started doing all sorts of genetically modified things to it. But back in 1886, Coca-Cola was literally a headache tonic. Truthfully, you would go down to the local pharmacy and you could buy it as a headache tonic and a pharmacy experiment in Atlanta. So fast forward to today, it's literally global happiness in a bottle. You've all seen their commercials, right? The polar bears sliding down joyfully. They don't just sell soda. They basically sold an experience, a connection, an emotional heartstring. They created a ritual. They created joy around a soda. And if you think about those Christmas time commercials they had, the Santa ads, the polar bear, the whole idea of sharing a Coke campaign where your name was on the bottle. Remember that you could buy Coca-Cola with your name? I've never seen a Devo on there, but I've seen Devin. But you could actually go buy a can of Coke, and I think people still do them today and have your name on it. Like, that's not marketing, that's branding, that's intimacy, that's connecting with your buyer, and nobody understands it better than Coca-Cola. Next, I wanna talk about Nike because 'cause I've talked about it at the outset, is those well, we'll get to Air Jordans in a second, but in 1964, Nike's CEO, Phil Knight, he was selling shoes out of his trunk, and Bill Bowerman was cooking soles in waffle irons to put on these shoes, and they had this breakthrough, and it wasn't around using rubber, it was creating this experiential idea of better meaning. Nike made sports about life, not about shoes. They said, "You're not buying sneakers from us, you're buying courage from us," and that's what the whole idea of just what do it means to them. And then you take a look at other companies like Amazon, and we all shop at Amazon, right? Like, literally, who hasn't shopped at Amazon and who hasn't? I remember the day I ordered, vegetables from, when they first introduced the Prime Market, whatever that was called, and they were literally delivered to my door an hour later. And how many times do you order something and it's like within 24 hours you have it? That originally started off as a small, quirky online bookstore, and, Jeff Bezos, he had this really weird obsession, go figure, customer first. And Prime wasn't just about fast shipping and getting it the next day. What they created was about removing friction from your life. Again, so think about that value proposition. While they do advertise it, they didn't sell us the idea that I could get something overnight, even though that was really convenient. They sold me the idea of having to put on some clothes, or not me, but most people put on some clothes, put on some shoes, walk out to your car, get in the car, turn in the keys, go to the bank, maybe, whatever it is, drive however far away from the closest store you need to go to, and rinse and repeat that on a daily basis. And they remove that from your life. And that builds trust, man. And trust is the new currency of loyalty. I'm using an Apple computer right now. One of the reasons I use Apple is just really for the simplicity, the minimalism, and the synchronization between that and my phone. That's why I switched from Android many years ago and PCs, and they're just easier to use. That's just my opinion. But Apple started from two nerds in a garage dreaming of making computers more human, and that's what I say. They just seem simpler to me. Um, Steve Jobs said, "Think different," and that wasn't just a tagline that he tagged on to get people to sort of, like, become cult heroes for him. It was really a call to arms for anyone who was working for Apple, anybody who used Apple, to sort of think outside the box. And whether he meant it, idea of sort of becoming more unique and more creative has always been a centerpiece for a very select group of humans. And not everybody wants to belong and be clone-like. And so Apple sort of challenged that idea, and they made technology emotional through it, right? They made it creative, they made it personal, and that's why people tattoo that logo literally on their skin, and I have seen those. I'm like, "Man, this is hardcore." And now my favorite hero. Somebody once asked me if there's anybody, famous that I would like to meet, and there's really only 2 people that I would really actually love to meet, and there's a lot of people I'd love to meet, but if I had to, like, get 2, because I don't really, like, pine over Hollywood or anything, it's just not my thing. But Michael Jordan was one of them, and Jesus is the other. They're just 2 people who I would love to sit and have conversations with. Anyhow, back to Michael Jordan. He didn't just play basketball. He created this idea of excellence, and he turned it into a lifestyle brand. His Air Jordans, his Nike commercials, playing for Dream Team USA, everything. He created a tribe, literally a culture around Michael Jordan wearing a pair of Jordans, owning Jordan paraphernalia, and owning a pair of anything Jordan meant you belong to the cool kids club. You belong to Team Jordan, and I mean, Jordan is arguably, this is a debate that goes on all the time in sports circles. I don't know, arguably, I've only been around for 40 some years, and I've only seen, 20, 30 years of that playing basketball. I've never seen anything like Michael Jordan. Even Kobe was amazing, Wilt Chamberlain, Dr. J, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson. The list is endless. My era in particularly really enjoyed some great basketball players, but there's an argument to say Michael Jordan is literally the greatest basketball player of all time. And he created the power of his story, and people latched onto that. So, yeah, there's just a lot to learn from this. All right, so do you notice any patterns here? These brands didn't blow up just because of their products. Their products matter, but they're not the reason people camp outdoors for 24 hours for the next line of Air Jordans or for the next iPhone or whatever the next product that any of these people put out. They bought into the emotional gravity, and they created emotional gravity. They turned a product into a story, and that story they turned into a cultural movement. And that's the game that we can play too, even as a small business owner. We may not have the next pair of Jordans or the next Apple or whatnot, or that brand loyalty, but we can create a personal brand, a coaching brand, a creative brand, a service brand, and we might not have a $1 billion budget, but we have something that they didn't when they started. We have direct access to an audience and the ability to build real connections through that. And it's your social media, it's your phone, it's this YouTube video I'm doing right now. Somebody will hear this, hopefully, and it will resonate with them and they will share it with somebody else. And if you think back to all those examples I just gave you, Apple, my Air Jordan, Amazon, they didn't have this sort of technology, and look what they built. And it just takes one really cool idea. So, what's the next move here for you? I think that we should really think about those case studies and those brands and do what they did, which was start with their truth. What's the human story behind your business? Why did you start this business in the first place? Where did it come from? What was the idea? Was it drawn on a napkin one night? Were you in the shower? Are you on a run? Whatever it is, was it in a conversation with somebody? Everybody sort of starts with this genesis and really understand what that story is and start to make notes about it and share that story. And then I also want you to think bigger than your product or your service. I'm a coach, think bigger than that. What do I actually stand for? What does your business stand for? What does your brand stand for? Nike didn't sell shoes, they sold excellence, they sold resilience, they sold this idea of doing something bigger than yourself. So, you also with that space, you wanna make people feel something, and people forget features. Again, they're not buying your product, they're buying you. They never forget how you made them feel. They might forget features, but they're never gonna forget how something made them feel, whether it's the restaurant that I ate at last night, whether it was a favorite bar you go to, a pair of Nikes, a pair of leggings, whatever it is, that makes you feel a type of way. And if you can make somebody who's buying your product feel a type of way about your product, that's how you make them your tribe. Speaking of a tribe, think of this more as your people. It's not an audience. It's not a whole group of people. It's your tribe. It's your people. It's the group that you really resonate with and they resonate with you. You have shared values, you have shared languages, you have shared pride, you have the same team you root for, whatever it is. Think about how you can create some sort of a group, start small, scale. And then you have to stay consistent, man. You just have to stay consistent and you always have to continually evolve. Coke stayed consistent about happiness. Nike stayed consistent about courage. You have to evolve, but don't lose your soul. Know where you came from, stay consistent, and be adaptive, reflexive, and evolve. Your brand is not a costume, it's literally a mirror. Look at yourself in the mirror and understand how you show up. And if that mirror appears a bit foggy, then nothing else is going to work, and you're going to have to wipe that down and start over and get that message clear. So here's my question to you. What is your little story right now? And what's the big story it wants to become? Drop it in the comments, journal about it, send me a DM. I'd love to hear it. If you're serious about turning that little story into a brand that people can't stop talking about, then I want to talk to you about this. Okay. I'll drop a link to my brand discovery session in the description below. Check it out. It's an exhaustive deep dive pulling back the covers of you. How do you show up? What problems do you solve? How do you uniquely see the world? And how do we then craft a narrative, a message around that unique version of you so that other people hear it and resonate with it? Because when your brand really finally feels like you, that's when the true magic happens. Thank you for following. Thank you for listening. Like, subscribe, share this with someone building their story, and I look forward to speaking to you soon.